and it is 7 o'clock. And I'm going to call the meeting of Middleton Plan Commission for Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 to order. And the first item is the roll call. Abby?
Bruce,
Here.
Murray,
Here.
Paulson. I saw Paulson. Oh, it looks like he's reconnecting right now. Ramsey,
Here.
Schaefer,
Here.
Slavish,
Here.
and Paulson.
Here.
All right. Okay, so we are all here. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Plan Commission minutes from April 13th, 2021.
Move approval.
Okay, need a second. Okay, I will go ahead and second it.
Schaefer seconds.
Okay, second by John Schaefer. So any questions or comments? Okay, so the motion is to approve the Plan Commission minutes for April 13th, 2021. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to the agenda item number 1. This is the design review for patio addition to Paul's Neighborhood Bar, 2401 Parmenter Street. And Daphne, you're going to take it?
Yeah, so Paul's Neighborhood Bar, they're just basically expanding their patio space. It's going to be about double. There are 2 existing trees here, but the patio was stopped right before them, so they don't need to, remove any trees. And then is an existing black kind of fencing that they're going to be expanding out to the space as well. And then we recommend approval contingent on screening of these dumpster areas, since there will be a lot more pedestrian traffic along that sidewalk.
Excellent. Well, it looks pretty good. So any questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay, I make a
Well,
motion. Go ahead.
Mayor, the only question is, the dumpsters, are they taking up what is normally a parking space, or are they supposed to be there normally? Because in the pictures, they look like they're taking in a park. But I agree with, so wherever they put them, they should just screen them.
Yes.
You're correct, Kurt. They are taking up a parking space right now. And what I've noticed, because I live in this area and walk on the street a lot, is that oftentimes the lid is actually hanging over the sidewalk. So I think it would be a really nice improvement if they were able to designate a particular parking area or parking stall or 2, and then to screen it like what's required in our ordinance.
So we have someone from Paul's Bar. If Danon,
Yes.
would you like to say something, sir?
No, that we're perfectly okay with adding the screening in there. It'll obviously help prevent the trash cans from sometimes getting pushed back. There really is nowhere else that we can put the trash cans. So we're just going to leave them there and just add the screening in there. And hopefully that'll help prevent anything crossing over into the sidewalk, and obviously looking better as well.
Okay. And is that okay with the commissioners? Paul, is that
Yes.
Is that okay with you?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, works for me.
Randy
Okay.
Bruce had his hand raised.
Randy?
Yes,
Go ahead.
I was just wondering whether the dumpsters could go further back from the street, if there's a location at the back corner of the parking lot where they wouldn't necessarily be quite so visible to the public.
Well, that's what we're hoping with the screening, that they won't be visible to the public. by adding the screening in there. But with where the dump truck comes in to grab the garbage, it's really hard maneuvering in the first place if we were to maneuver them to a different spot. And then we do have that shed in the back where we keep our Bobcat and things like that for clearing snow. So we really can't block that at all. But I mean, I think the screening will definitely help quite a bit to make it look nice. And we're going to continue on, not with the fencing that they have, but like the fencing we have around the patio, the wood fencing part on it. If you see it down below there, we'll continue that fencing because we're going to go with the same company again.
Sounds good.
Would that be okay with you, Randy? I mean, if they could move it somewhere, that would be great, but if they can screen it, that's probably not bad, so. I don't see any other hands raised. Anybody else? Any questions or comments?
Ramsey will move to approve with contingency that the dumpster area is screened in.
Slavish
Okay.
will second.
Okay. So any further question or comments? Motion by Elder Ramsey and second by Commissioner Mike Slavish. Okay. So the motion is to approve the design review for patio addition at Paul's Neighborhood Bar, 2401 Parmenter Street. And they will screen their dumpsters. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we are on to item number 2.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. This is the specific implementation plan modification for sign design review for Mocha Coffee and Triton Auto Spa 3517 Tribeca Drive. Mark?
Thank you, Mayor. You'll recall at the March 23rd meeting, when you last considered this, part of the motion was to allow staff to approve any modifications to the sign as long as the sign didn't increase in area. Well, technically, 5 inches wider is an increase, so that's why this is back before you. They are accommodating a new electronic message center design, which is slightly larger, and that's why the size has increased in size. As the sign has increased in size. I have no concerns with it. I think it still is very comparable to what was previously approved. So our staff recommendation is to approve as a minor SMP modification with the understanding that the message center operate in accordance with our standard code language, section 22.084B.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Any questions or comments? Let's see if there's any hands raised. Randy?
This seems like it's essentially doing exactly what we asked them to do. So I'd make a motion for approval.
Okay, I will second it. Any further questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? The motion is for SIP modification for sign design review for Mocha Coffee and Triton Auto Spa 3517 Tribeca Drive. All those in favor of the motion?
Mayor, was that with the as recommended by staff? Was that the motion?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So the motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 3. Recommendation for sign variance, Adams Outdoor Advertising, parcel 255-0708, Airport Road Business Park, first edition. This has been deferred from the Plan Commission twice. So they're asking for deferral again. So I don't know, what do you want to do with this now?
The applicant actually happens to be on the call. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mayor. I just want to point out that he is present, but he has requested a deferral, but perhaps he has an update for you.
Okay, I can, would you, I don't see any hand raised. Jason,
It's Jason.
do you want to
Yep.
speak? Jason?
Yes, we would still like to have a deferral. if
Okay,
Possible.
okay,
Ramsey will move to defer.
okay,
Olson will second.
okay.
And
And-
can we make sure the record reflects deferral at the request of the applicant?
Okay. Could you record that, Abby, or whoever is taking the minutes?
I've got it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, so the motion is to defer the recommendation for sign variance for Adams Outdoor Advertising at the request of the applicant. And all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes.
This is Murray. I recused myself from voting on this item.
Oh, okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so Jennifer Murray, she accused herself. Okay. We are on to item number 4. Implementation of park development fees as proposed in comprehensive outdoor recreation plan 2020 to 2025.
Yep, I
Mm.
just had a couple of quick updates on this item, and I think Matt Amundson was gonna try to join in at about this time as well. We got some questions from commission members about this. One of the questions was, what is the plan commission's role in reviewing cost increases for park fees? And this item was referred to the plan commission by Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission. And I assume that the reason that they referred it to the Plan Commission is because most of the development review is handled by the Plan Commission. But also the ordinance, the city code states that the Plan Commission makes the determination of land dedication or fees in lieu of land dedication, and that is based on a recommendation from PRFC. I know that this has happened in the past where there's land that a developer is looking to dedicate as parkland. The Parks Board maybe would make a recommendation to say, no, we'd prefer to accept the fees in lieu, but it would be the Plan Commission that would get to determine whether we would accept fees in lieu or we would accept the land dedication. Obviously, with a lot of the infill development that we've been seeing lately, we have been getting mostly fees in lieu of land dedication. And to give an example, just in looking at the Bruce Company project, for example, that's a 14-acre redevelopment project. And based on the number of residents that we could potentially have there, which is about 1,000 residents, they would need to dedicate 15 acres of land because that's the city's standard, but that's more acreage than they even are redeveloping for their whole entire project. So this is really a kind of a tough issue for consideration by the city, is what to do for, how do we continue to serve the public with the standards that we have set for parkland as we're continuing to see more and more infill development, and we're really limited on the amount of greenfield sites that we have available. By the city's ordinance, the planning department is responsible for taking annual consumer price index increases through the committees and the council for approval. And then large overhauls to the park fees are handled by the Parks Department. And that's just how the city has handled park fee increases over time. Let's see, what else? There was a fee update in 2018, but that was just a consumer price index increase. It was not a total overhaul of the park fees. And Commissioner Paulson had pointed out that on not this chart, but on the other chart that's maybe on the next page in the memo that that Matt Amundson prepared, it shows NA on land dedication fee for single family. And the reason for that is not that the city doesn't charge park fees for single family development, we do, but it's because we just categorize our fees as either the fee for a 1-bedroom unit or the fee for a 2+. And obviously most single family homes are going to fall into the 2+ category. So we do charge park fees for all new units that are developed in the city if they require a subdivision or a rezoning. We a fee to all of those projects. I think that that's all I had, and I'm not sure if Matt Amundsen has joined the call or not. It looks like he is. So he's here too if you have any questions.
Abby, you
Okay.
said that we charge a fee if it's a rezoning or a subdivision. Do we
Yes.
charge a fee on a CSM for a new house?
If there is yes, if there's a new unit and it's not just a replacement. So if land is being divided, let's say there's one home and it's being divided and there's a new unit going on the other lot, then they would pay a fee for that one new unit.
And the other question would be, the requirement is around 1,400 square feet per new unit. Have we approximated what the cost of land is and whether these fees in lieu are similar to the cost of land, or is it just, this is mostly an inflation type adjustment because costs of development have gone up?
Kurt, I'm happy to take a stab at this. This is Matt Amundsen. The new park and open space plan really goes into detail on this, and how the new proposed fee was calculated is the consultant that prepared the park plan looked at the cost of an undeveloped acre of land in Middleton, how many acres we would need to add to stay at our current ratio of parkland to resident. And then, you know, the math is in the plan, and it's hard to argue with the math the way she laid it out. And I think that's what PRFC's really latched onto for both the fee in lieu as well as the park improvement fee.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay, so Kurt, you're done? Okay, so the next one is John Schaefer and then Mike Slavish.
Yeah, so as chair of PRFC and working with Matt, I think that there was a significant agenda in the committee behind these numbers. And it came down to the fact is that we can compare other cities, other institutions, et cetera. We can look at these numbers, but the fact is we have a park system that's doubled or increased 50%, I think, over the last 20 years. The staffing and budget has not. We keep getting fees from developers when there's no land available. And we decided that instead of trying to put together a sense of proposed budget that looked at some sense of middle ground reality, we said, this is what it takes to have a park system that you want, that fits the norms of what should be there and what the costs would be and what would it take to support the system that we have. We seem to be adding development all over the place, and we get fees, but we get no land, and land is outrageously expensive. So the park system is just falling behind, and we're not in a position to deal with this. What we wanted to do is push some buttons to say, when you're looking at developers, they ought to be looking at land, not money. But if you're looking at money, we are so far behind what it's going to be to maintain this park system. This is what it's going to take to do it and to sustain what we have at a level that moves forward. So these numbers are not based on looking at what some Prairie did or Verona did, et cetera. They're looking at what we need to do if we want to have a good park system. And the committee together thought it's time to push some buttons and throw these numbers out. And certainly these numbers can be rejected, but this is saying, this is what it's going to take to have a Middleton park system that's been what we want it to be. And here are the numbers, like it or not. And so that's what drove all of this.
Thank you, John. So the next one is Mike Slavish and then Randy Bruce.
Thanks, Mayor. And thank you too, Abby, for clarifying the fee structure for single family homes. I too had that question. You know, the way this table was laid out, it didn't look like we were charging any fees for single family. Clearly that's not the case. So appreciate that. Just a couple of thoughts. First of all, I mean, clearly there has been a great deal of activity in Middleton in terms of multifamily development.
So whatever our fee structure is currently, it doesn't seem to be deterring developers in a large way. That being said, just a couple of reactions. That is a sizable increase if you're doing that from one year to the next. For me, if you're going to implement these increases to support parks operations, which I do support, seems to me we ought to be doing that in some kind of phased approach, first of all. And I know that was one of the recommendations. I don't know if that was the third sheet there, Abby. For me, that seems a lot more palatable. It gives developers a chance to react and to adjust and, to plan accordingly. So again, that would be something I would strongly support in terms of implementing any kind of fee increase, especially these that arguably are sizable in terms of percentage. The second comment I would have as the chair of the Workforce Housing Committee, it doesn't appear that we make any distinction in any of this between market rate housing and what we call either affordable workforce or even the missing middle that that gets tossed around a lot. And should there be any consideration given to those that are trying to provide a more affordable product in our community, knowing that it's a very difficult thing to do regardless, and then layering on these additional fees. So I don't know if there's any current provision to waive those fees or to reduce those fees, if you're providing housing at a certain AMI threshold or below.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
Just
Mike.
to quickly
Next
answer-
is Randy Bruce and then Kurt Paulson.
Can I let Abby finish what her comment was and then I'll
Oh.
speak?
Abby, you have some comments?
I was just gonna say that we don't have any provisions right now to waive park fees. We only have that in place for impact fees that support fire and EMS for workforce housing units.
Thanks, Abby. So in that regard, then I guess I would recommend or at least suggest that we refer this fee structure, to the Workforce Housing Committee to allow them to at least provide, an opportunity to chime in on this as well. Again, as it relates to the workforce housing component.
That's excellent point. So the next is Randy Bruce, then Kurt Paulson, and then Elder Ramsey.
So I had a couple of comments or questions. I agree with Mike that I think the fee structure, these park fees or impact fees are, if we were to jump them as proposed, whether they get absorbed or not, they are going to get passed along to our consumers, the people that are moving into Middleton, that are going to move into these apartments or homes. And we're just increasing the cost of new construction and making it more difficult for people to move into our community. And could we go to the next page of this, Abby, that showed, I just wanted to see how the funds were spent. And if that's where our fees were being spent, I noticed that quite a bit of the expenditure was on Lakeview Path and Lakeview Park Shelter, which are existing parks. And I'm wondering if are we funding our park improvements on existing parks with these new fees? And is it maybe more appropriate for us to be funding that with from a general tax receipts or the general fund? So my two comments are, that's one of them. The other one is, I think we have to be really careful about not just costs to people with in the lowest income levels, but really across all spectrums. If we want to make the community inclusive, we need to watch the costs carefully for people moving into the neighborhood or into our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Randy? Okay, so the next one is Kurt Paulson and then Elder Ramsey.
So I was gonna second what Mike was saying, that in the past, we have tried to get a waiver of impact fees for the affordable housing developments that we've done in the city. But I guess for both Matt and Abby, we may need to ask Matt Fleming or Larry about this because Chapter 66 impact fees have a specific statutory allowance for waiver for low-cost housing. But these are Chapter 236 park fees that are not impact fees, they're park fees. And there's no specific provision in that section of the statutes to allow a waiver for low-income housing. There's actually nothing in there. So is that which is not prohibited permissible, or is that which is not permitted prohibited? I don't know. But I want to second Mike's comments that we should adopt some sort of general policy rather than on a case-by-case basis that affordable housing meeting certain definitions should be automatically exempt from park fees, because I just ran some numbers. If you're doing a 50-unit affordable development, this is almost $500,000 that you'd have to pay. And that really eats into the cost structure. On the other hand, of course, people in those apartments use parks and want parks as well. So yeah, those are my comments.
Thank you, Kurt. So the next one is Elder Ramsey and then Commissioner John Schaefer.
And I would agree with what Mike and Kurt are saying in that with the affordable housing units, one of the things that we outlined in our just past comprehensive plan, one of the strategies we talked about was waiving some of these fees for affordable housing. As Kurt said, while a complete waiver, they do use parks, maybe what we need to look at is some kind of staggered fee, whereas an affordable housing project pays some fees, but maybe not necessarily the full bulk fees. So, I mean, that's something to look at, but I would agree with Mike. We should refer this to workforce housing.
Okay. So next one is John Schaefer and then Randy Bruce. Kurt, okay, yeah, John Schaefer and then Randy Bruce.
So I appreciate the conversations, and I agree with all of it. But the issue is it keeps coming down as to who shouldn't pay. The fact is the people who are coming in affordable housing are going to need and want the same parks and the same access. We don't want to deny them to say you're coming in an affordable housing, so therefore you don't deserve a park. So somewhere the money has to come to cover this thing. And it's great to talk about exceptions about who should be left out, but that doesn't resolve the issue about the fact there's a huge shortage of funding and space to do with it. And I'm not against any of all of this. I think, again, we threw this out to the committees to say there's a shortage of funding in parks and everybody needs them. And we need to do something different than what we're doing right now. But, you can alleviate and say, remove this funding source. What do you replace it with? Where does it come from? So that's just the issue. These numbers, I don't mean to say they're specious numbers. These are numbers that came out of a lot of crunching. It says if we want parks for everybody and want to cover the space, these are the numbers it's going to take. And whatever we do and whatever anybody does is going to adjust against us. That's not what I'm arguing against or for, but these numbers are hard.
Thank you, John. Next one is Randy Bruce.
I guess I agree. We need to make sure that we're funding our park systems. Middleton's park systems are a tremendous asset for the community, and I'd certainly like to see that continue. I guess my only question is should we be putting it on the backs of new construction and new development, or should we be, which is a smaller pool, or should we be putting it across the community at large and funding it that way?
Thank you.
Well said. Thank you.
Any of the other commissioners? I got a lot of points here, but I want to give you an opportunity if anyone else wants to speak. So I want to say thank you to John Schaefer for chairing the PRFC and all the PRFC committee. And I also want to say thank you to Matt Amundson for Parks and Rec now for raising the issue of building new parks is expensive and how we're going to pay for it. So Matt has also shown that developments in one part of the city are funding park development in other parts of the city, essentially, for example, Taylor Park. And I also like what Randy pointed out that, some of the funds, for example, Lakeview Park Shelter, should that have been a park fee or should that have been a capital budget? And there are some other things in this table which were capital budget, but they're listed here, but that's a small thing. So we know from the past that fees collected from one part of the city where they get nothing and they're spent somewhere else. For example, Market West just in 2019 paid $800,000, and that part of the city, and I know we are working on it, got zero benefit. So if you go somewhere and you pay something, you expect something in return. You don't really charge somebody something for forever, and then you think that you're going to get away with it. And well, somewhere, if you are, something is broken there. So then I start to look at the numbers. If you have a quick look at this table, which is in front of you, so now the fees in lieu are higher in Middleton, or of course we are not comparing with the cities, by 40%, and they're higher than Waunakee by 141%. We live in a competitive world. These numbers are worked on the numbers which are provided here from the table. These are not my numbers, so if there's anything in the table, then these numbers will change. And of course, they're quite a bit lower than the Pittsburgh. And our park development fees, they're 20% lower than Sun Prairie and 33% lower than Waunakee, and much, much higher than Pittsburgh. So the proposed increase for the fees in lieu will be 54%. And the park improvement fee will be 267% for a five-year proposed period. Again, these calculations are based on the numbers which are provided in this table, which you see here up front. So the hour fee, if implemented, will add together, when you add those fees for the park and for the park improvement, they will be added together 152% of Sun Prairie and 180% for the total fees of Fitchburg. Fitchburg is a little bit tricky here, the way these numbers are given here. So I'm using the number which is for a single family home or which is over here. So the other one, which is for multifamily, $160, I thought there was some mistake. I'm not using that. So I don't have the numbers which I could compare for Madison, but it looks like, ours will be just astronomically high. So I agree with John that the purpose here is not, there's no expectation that we're going to be doing this, but the expectation is to bring this attention and to the Plan Commission, City Councils and others that we have a need and how to fund it. So I think I actually would make Elder Ramsey also had a point which I can add to the motion later, but I think I said it has been mentioned earlier. So let's send it to workforce housing. We want to be inclusive. We don't want to, by raising these fees, where are they going to go? I mean, they are going to be passed on to the consumer. They are going to be passed on who are going to buy those units or renting units. They are not, developers are not going to be absorbed this. So that means, if the housing prices go up, who's going to come here? Those who can afford it. So it will be keeping a lot of people out of Middleton here. And then we, have a drumbeat of, affordable housing. What is going to do the affordable housing? So there are a lot of more things which I could talk about, but I deal with the numbers here, and I think the numbers look very interesting. So I will make a motion to send to the workforce housing, as it was already mentioned by two commissioners, to look at that, how it will impact the workforce housing, what may be the realistic fee. I don't really have any problem in increasing at a rate twice the inflation rate or something of a similar. And also part of the motion is find a mechanism that how do we meet this demand? And I don't know who will find out that how these park fees and the fees in lieu should be spent. Is that really proper use as it was done in the past, or it should be somewhere in the ordinance somewhere? So send it to the workforce housing. And Elder Ramsey, you had something you also wanted to send it to our finance director to look at some of the other things.
Well, my question was in thinking about this, and if we start making waivers for workforce housing, or whatever we may have waivers for, how does that impact the fee with the limited amount of development space we're having? At what point does the fee slow things down to where we're not really coming out ahead? Particularly if if we put out a lot of waivers. So it would be interesting if the finance department could do some kind of analysis as to at what point are we actually going backwards because either the fees are too high and the development isn't happening, or we're giving out so many waivers that the developments that actually would pay a fee, there's not enough of them.
Okay,
I think we can kind of look back historically over the developments we've had over the last couple of years and be able to kind of get a ballpark figure anyway.
Okay, so you want me to personally ask Bill Burns, or should it be part of the motion?
I don't know that it needs to be part of the motion, but I think it's certainly a question, and I would ask that we direct staff to take a look at that.
Okay, so the motion is to send it to the workforce housing to look at it, so need a second.
Second.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Bruce, second.
Okay, second by Commissioner Randy Bruce. Any further question or comments?
Just for the minutes, so the motion is simply to refer to the Workforce Housing Committee? Is that how you're leaving the motion?
Well, I would also like to send it to Bill Burns, Finance Department, to look into what Elder Ramsey has pointed out.
And finance staff. I had heard you say something about investigating a mechanism. I'd started typing that, so that's why I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Could we, I would say, if that's okay with you, Randy, should we add that too?
Investigating a mechanism for what, Mayor?
That how, it should be funded, that what's the proper use of these funds as well?
That would be agreeable. What's the proper use of the funds and what's the proper source of the funds?
Okay, all right, I'm with you. Okay.
Although I will say, of course, we want to weigh in as the plan commission of what's the appropriate use of the funds, but ultimately that's PRFC's call, right, to recommend. And the other comment is, I'm assuming that at some point in time, this will go before the finance committee, because before it's adopted, it'll have to go there. I guess the only other point is I'm looking at all the projects that we've collected park fees from, and we've also, most of those also received TIF assistance. So we're kind of taking the money out of one pocket to put it in another pocket. Right, I'm not saying that, I mean, it's a tough choice there.
Okay, well, could we look at that too? I mean, could we ask the finance department, Kurt, to look at that part as well? I mean, that's really not, well, anyway, the way you said it, I agree with you.
Well, I mean, they pay their increment in TIF. And so if we waive the fees, we would probably reduce the amount of TIF, but then we wouldn't have any capital for parkland, and you can't use TIF proceeds for parkland, but you can collect the fees. So I mean, ultimately, Finance Committee is going to have to decide this because it's two competing priorities, both of which are good.
Yes. Agreed.
And that's why they
Okay.
pay the elected officials the big bucks. And we're just advisory.
That's a point
Okay,
of officials get
so-
nothing, you know?
Well,
So this is, go ahead, sorry.
Right now, it's going to the workforce housing with all those things, and also the finance department look at some of these things. And once it comes back, then we will see where it goes.
So this is how I have recorded the motion based on all the discussion, and I want to make sure I'm not putting words in your mouth, Mayor.
Thank you.
And Randy seconded, to refer this to the Workforce Housing Committee and Finance staff for the purpose of providing information about the proper source and use of the funds. That was kind of,
Okay.
does that summarize everything well?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah,
That works for me.
yeah, that's fine. Okay, any further questions or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. All right, so we're on to the next item on the agenda. The item 5.
Abby, can I share my screen, please?
Of Wall and Associates for request or proposal for zoning ordinance. I would say it is selecting a forum for zoning ordinance overhaul project. So in any case, I will open it for discussion now. And the staff has made for Wall and Associates, but I have gone through all 7 proposals today, and I have like you guys probably did. I picked the top 3 in my view, and well, I don't want to zone co and urban assets is the best, no question about it. And then HKGI and Vanderwall are tied, in my opinion. And yeah, that's what I see. And I feel we should invite these 3 folks to come and make a presentation to the Plan Commission. Of course, it will be Zoom. We don't have to pay for, well, 2 of them are right here in Madison. One is in Minneapolis. That's how I feel about it. So, but I do want to begin with say thank you to all the 7 firms who responded to the request for proposals. And I want to say thank you for their time and their talent and for their effort. So they all made excellent proposals, but finally we have to choose the top. So, and table here gives all the names, and I'm not going to read them. So that's, I like to discuss this, so open for discussion, how we want to handle it. And let's see, anybody, Kurt Paulson has raised hand.
Yeah,
so
I wanted
go
to
ahead.
ask a question of Mark and the staff. I know in the memo you described it, but I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit more about the process. As I understand it, council and the Plan Commission basically commissioned this zoning ordinance rewrite work group, affectionately known as ZORG, to evaluate the proposals. And it looks like from your notes that each of them evaluated them independently. And was there a consistent ranking of those independent evaluations?
Well, let's see, what's on your screen right now is, did I stopped sharing, right?
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Do you see a table on your screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's highlighted in yellow are the 3 firms that were just described by the mayor. And those were the 3 firms that the zoning ordinance work group, or ZORG, identified. The work group members, so Randy Bruce representing the Plan Commission, Justin Bulwig representing Zoning Board of Appeals, and Spencer Schumacher from Sustainability, and I met with them. So the four of us had this discussion, and all four of the members of the people in the discussion, I should say, had identified Vanderwall as their preferred, that based on that, the criteria that were identified in the RFP with the different weights for the different criteria that are listed in the memo. Based on that, Vanderwall came out as the top choice, and then HKGI and ZoneCo tied for second place. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Question?
it does. So my general comment is, if we commission a work group and those folks independently read the proposals and score them all ordinally consistent, that seems to me to be a reasonable process. I mean, I've seen these firms work, and I think I haven't read all the zoning codes that they've written, but I know that Vanderwall has done some in Wausau and Fort Atkinson that are kind of reasonably new and recent, that would kind of seem to meet our needs. So I'm fine with trusting this work group that's put in the time to read all these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Good point. I went through that memo which Plan Commission and City Council had approved. There's a point 3 in there, and well, I don't have a paragraph in front of me, where the Plan Commission will review, and that's where we are. They do all that background work, but it's still our responsibility to see what we want to do with it. So Randy, do you want to provide the perspective? I have looked at the rankings, which I will not mention here, but the ones which this ZoneCo impressed me was the simplicity, clarity, and they have their office here in Madison, their office in Cincinnati, and the amazing amount of work which they have done all over the country. And I'm very impressed with what Vanderwall has done in Wisconsin, some in Illinois as well. And also, we have been working with them well over 30 years. And also they were the one 40 years ago wrote the zone code, which we have now. But the way I look at it is that, is there some sort of inbreeding? Do we need a fresh outlook, some from fresh viewpoint, just like ZoneCo provides? If you were to, Kurt or others, look at it, it's just so 3 points, diagnose, and then come up with a plan and then codify. I don't, they may not be exact headings, but that's what it is. So, and then you go through it, so refreshing. And the other two, they are fine too. I don't really have such a big issue, but ZoneCo was just clarity, simplicity, and forthright, and what they have done around the countries, including, I don't remember how many places they have done in Wisconsin, but well, I'm sure. Oh yeah, they did the East-West. Oh yeah, they have done actually quite a bit right here in Madison. So did the BRT East-West, that Madison East corridor or some of those. Well, I may be, since when you're reading 7, you may not remember all of that, but I think they did quite a bit in Madison as well. Anyway, I was quite impressed. So Randy, you were on the team, you want to say a few words or say, how do you look at it?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, I was impressed with the responses that we got. I thought we had some very good responses, some from national or certainly regional firms, and I was very excited by that. And I was excited about, like you, Mayor, of maybe getting some fresh ideas, some fresh thoughts, something new. But in my reading, and evidently the reading from other members in the work group, Vanderwall's, they just did such a good job on their proposal. We do have to take into account that they were also, maybe 80% of the cost. So for the same fee, we're going to be able to get some additional work that's going to be necessary to implement that code. I think there's some value there. Personally, I wouldn't have any problem if staff and or the mayor wanted to interview a couple of the firms and get some more information from them. We're reviewing the proposal, so we see what is presented on paper. We're not getting to interact and ask questions and get further information. So if the Plan Commission feels that would be appropriate, I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Well, there was a 80% of the cost, and I thought that we were comparing apples to apples. And then when over here, what I see in our agenda is a request for approving for nearly $500,000, which will be the same as the others. I probably would be more prone to proving at 80,000, like you said, 80%, and because these top three are good, but getting a fresh perspective, I know coming from science with a background in research and development and different viewpoints do make a difference. Otherwise, we are in silos, and Vanderwall is doing so much for us, and that was one of my perspective too. But at 80%, I may consider it. So I'd like to hear from others. So John, you have any viewpoint or any of the others? So John, go ahead.
Yeah, I think one of the questions to ask is Vanderwall has been done things for the city for decades. And we should sit back and actually assess the value and how good that's actually been. There's at least a couple examples I know of where there's been some really far off estimates from Vanderwall. And I'm not necessarily saying that they're bad as a company. Nobody has a crystal ball, but I guess I sit with the mayor a little bit and say it might be time that we have a very comfortable company in Vanderwall who knows the city, knows what we want, and in fact will maybe perhaps too much speak to what we want. And I don't think they're a bad company at all. I just think it might be good to look at bringing an outside breath.
Exactly. I just well said. I agree with you. So any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, could I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
My question is, the Vanderwall was $80,000 and they had optional tasks. Can you tell me, Mark, were those optional tasks that added up to the 99, were those tasks that were included in the other proposals?
Mark, you're muted.
You're muted, Mark.
I just realized it. Sorry about that. A lot of people would say that's an improvement. If you could pull up that, it should be in the packet towards the end, Daphne. They listed 6 other categories for tasks. What they emphasize in their proposal is that they could do all the work that was identified in the RFP for, let's call it $81,000. And then they said that they identified other areas that they felt would help augment the work and help complete the project, as they put it. I think it should be a little bit later.
So my question is, did they go above and beyond what the other firms did as far as scope of work with these optional add-ons?
The answer to that is yes. And so if you just wanted to go with their base proposal, which checks the boxes of the RFP requirements, then you'd be looking at $81,000. But then, as the mayor mentioned, we identified 2 areas that we thought, we as meaning staff specifically, thought could be really helpful for the city, and that is to help us with public input and mapping. Although frankly, we don't think all that public input, well, I'll speak for myself, but I think Abby feels this way too. We don't think all that public input assistance is necessary, at least not with as they presented here. For example, we don't think Mike Slavny needs to help us with everything. So that we feel, if you wanted to go this route, that's something that we feel should be negotiated and reduced. But the public input and mapping we felt could be very helpful to help complete the project. That was above and beyond the response. And I wanted to also mention that one of the things with ZoneCo, and I had a table on the screen a moment ago. The work group really liked ZoneCo's proposal and HKGI's and Vanderwall. That's why they were the top three. But ZoneCo, it does not seem that they've done any zoning code work in Wisconsin. And one of the things that helped Vanderwall stand out was that they have the knowledge of state law and case law and state statute specifically. So I think that's one reason why Vanderwall became a higher ranking. I also took the time to look at HKGI, their work in Roseville, Minnesota. They started a similar zoning code overhaul in Roseville, and they had their first meeting in March. And I looked at some of the Zoom meeting recording, and I was impressed with their work as well. But their work has been mainly in Minnesota, not as much Wisconsin. So I think that's why one reason why Vanderwall got a higher nod from the work group. But if you wanted us to look at all three of them, we can do that. It just will delay the start of the project and obviously increase the time to get started.
Mark, can I ask another question? With the public input, you indicated that you didn't think that it would, the staff necessarily would need that much or as much as that they were proposing. Would there be room then to negotiate them updating our sign ordinance as part of this project and in keeping with our $100,000 budget?
I think the answer to that would be yes, Alder Ramsey. The sign code is shown at the bottom as task E on what's on your screen for 9,120. When I looked at Vanderwall's work in other Wisconsin cities, Oshkosh, Wausau, Fort Atkinson, Jefferson, I noticed that the sign ordinance was actually integrated with the zoning ordinance in those communities. And so that is why, even though that wasn't identified in the RFP, that is why they actually recommended that that be something the city consider. So I think there is some flexibility here if you wanted to go down that route to ask them to modify this proposal to adjust the public input. Very frankly, we had to try and help make the budget of $100,000. We were actually thinking 100,000 might be a little tight for doing a thorough zoning code rewrite. And so we were prepared and offering to, we being staff, to facilitate more of the public involvement and mapping. I mean, that takes a lot of time, obviously. And if there's, we don't necessarily have well, I'll speak for myself, all the, not just time, but creativity to engage the public. I mean, we can do that, and we certainly would do our best, but there might be some techniques that other firms might have more expertise in, that I certainly feel is the case with other firms. So that's why this is appealing to consider the assistance with public input, and we certainly know Vanderwall's mapping ability. The sign code is obviously in need of overhauling. It's not something we've budgeted, but it is something we need to do very soon. We should have been doing it for several years already, frankly, but our priority was to get the comp plan done. The sign code is out of date. It doesn't comply with a recent Supreme Court decision from 5 or 6 years ago. So anyway, I'm sorry I was so long-winded with my answer.
Alder Ramsey, you have more questions?
Well, from my perspective, and I understand that Vanderwall has done a considerable amount of work for us, but in this particular situation, if we can get these optional tasks that we've outlined here, and I would like to see the sign code updated as part of this project, and if we can do that for our $100,000 budget, I think that we're getting quite a bang for our buck. And I'm comfortable with that.
So if I were to, I printed two things, Alder Ramsey. Number one is that I have some people who have raised hands. Randy and Kurt, I'm going to get back to you. So number one is that the memo which Vanderwall wrote is on April 23rd, where they are adding new tasks. And the same thing wasn't available to others. So, and that is over and above what was in the RFP. And when I look at this task A1, A2, blah, 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 and these things are already there in RFP. And the same way, the mapping sections B1 and B2, anyway, I compared these tasks in RFP, and some of them are already the repetitions, except that preparing the sign code, that isn't. Otherwise, the first three parts at least appear to me, I could be wrong, but that they are covered in that $80,000. So, okay, so Randy Bruce and Jen Murray, and Kurt, you had Randy Bruce and Jen Murray.
I just wanted to support what Alder Ramsey said. I really would like to see the sign code updated now with this if we could. We're seeing variance requests, and we're trying to figure out ways to approve or disapprove, and it's just not clear that we really are standing on good ground when we do it. So if we can get that accomplished along with this, I think that would be fantastic.
Okay, thank you. So Jennifer?
Yeah, I would like to trust the committee recommendation with Vanderwall, and also would like to see the sign code updated. And I think some of the discussion we're having, the difference in the costs between the three firms, to me, is very minor in the whole scheme of things. If I understand that there is a cost savings with Vanderwall, but my trust is in the fact that they understand state law and the principles of what we are looking for in our update, and it sounds like that the committee is recommending them. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I guess I could be persuaded we take that 8780 and then add the sign code. When I was reading through, they knew some of the Wisconsin codes more than the others. At some stages, for all of us, we do not, we need some fresh input from some other folks. We can't just have the same folks over and over, where it looks like a city of Milton department rather than, consultants. So I think if we go 8780 plus the sign code, that may be all right if we are doing two things in one. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so John Schaefer and then Kurt Paulson.
Yeah, I'm just concerned with the sign code thing. I think it's great, but Vanderwall's the one who put it in, and I don't think we should be suddenly favoring him because he had the foresight to put that in as an optional excuse. That this is not part of the original request, and so the other people who have vied for this position have not been in a position to know that that's something we wanted. So we've sort of added that now, it seems, as a extra criteria that then favors the one firm that mentioned that at the absence of the other firms.
That's an excellent point. So we should really approve the original RFP and then deal with anything else. Kurt Paulson?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something because I thought I heard something that might not be correct. If you look at the letter from Vanderwall on page 4 from Slavny, the final point 2, this is the April 2nd submission. This is the actual response to the RFP. We feel that the identified scope of work and consultant roles in the RFP do not require the full budgeted amount by the city to complete this project. Because of this, we have outlined several additional work elements that could utilize the remaining budget, which are described in more detail at the end of our proposed scope of services. So they didn't add it in April 23rd. It was part of the April 2nd submission.
But do you,
So
Right, it wasn't part of the initial call for proposals. I mean,
Right.
the other firms, that this is not something that was requested.
but they responded by saying the budget is too high. We'll give you additional work if you want to go up to the budget, which I think is an interesting strategy. You can see the pros and cons of that. They obviously know that we need a sign code in our city because they've run up against it. I guess the main question for me is, do we want to decide tonight, do we think that we have enough input from the working group to kind of trust their decision? Or do we want to have a public, I guess, interview where we interview all three of them? And I guess since I see Council President Olson on here too, is what would council prefer? Would they prefer us to just make a decision and a recommendation, or do they want a session where we have 20 or 30 minutes to interview each firm? And I don't know whether that is part of a plan commission public meeting, or we'd set up a separate kind of, maybe Mark or Abby can help us understand. Would that be just a separate meeting where we interview each of them? And then are we required to ask the same questions of all firms, or it's kind of an open give and take? Sorry, that was a mouthful, sorry.
well, okay, so Kathy Olson, do you want to provide any input? But I would say,
No,
you know,
you're doing just fine, you guys, so.
I think to be fair to all, you will ask the same questions and they would not be, you know, they will be there they all wouldn't be there at the same time. That would be what I would do. I can't really, yeah, that would be the fairest way to do, so, and transparent, so.
And we've, on other city projects, we've done it a lot of different ways. You know, thinking recently about the downtown plaza design and the community campus committee, those both did do interviews with a smaller group of proposals, and they had preset questions that they asked. I think we went around the room and had each committee member ask one of the questions. We also allowed time for follow-up questions, so those were different depending on the consultant. We've done those mostly in public meetings, so that they're available to be taped and put on the YouTube channel so members of the public can see the presentations and the interview questions. I know they did it a little differently recently with the strategic plan, where they had the presentations and the Q&A publicly, and then they went into a closed session to deliberate. That was the first time I've ever seen a closed session for a deliberation like that at the city, but there are a number of ways we could do it.
And that was at the council level.
Yes, it was, which is also a little different because usually that happens like at a committee level.
Yeah, I would ask that, you know, what is the negative to talking to all three? It will delay by a week, 2 weeks or less. What would be the impact of that on the project? This is the way I look at it. It has been 40 years. We are doing this after 40 years. And it's the vendor wall who did 40 years ago. And so it is just, you know, it's pretty important for the city, and we want to do it right. That's how I see it.
So are we looking for a motion then to, Mark, help us out. The motion would be to effectuate the mayor's concern that we would request the top three or all seven, the top three, right?
Yeah, just top three.
Top three for a interview at the plan commission meeting or a special meeting, or a, it would have to be a public meeting, right? And it would be noticed, and
Yeah, I think, based on what Abby was saying, and how we've done, I think, something similar to this, definitely you'd want it to have a public meeting. So it could either be the Plan Commission. You could task the work group with reconvening and having that as a public meeting. It's not an officially designated or created body per se, but it's it's officially created, but it's, it's not structured like the Plan Commission and Council. But I would think you'd want the Plan Commission or the work group to be involved, not just staff. I would want to add also that we did not ask Vanderwall. Vanderwall offered this on their own without any prompting or prodding from the city. I just want to say that for the record, because I think there was a question about whether this became part of the criteria, and it wasn't. It was only something that once they proposed it on August 2nd, that we saw that there was an opportunity to do some additional work for that budget. I just want to make sure that that's clear for the record, that that was not part of the evaluation criteria.
So Mark, but I saw that their letter is dated, that letter where they give this breakdown of the cost. I didn't read I spent a fair amount of time. That's dated April 23rd or 22nd,
Yes,
right?
Mayor, we were trying to anticipate, we were looking at the work group's product, which was that's what the process that was set in motion was, to have the work group meet and provide a recommendation. And once they made that recommendation, and also we had planning staff review that and come up with the same finding, the comfort level with Vanderwall, as well as the other two firms. Any of the three we are comfortable with. So we, whatever you decide, we are comfortable with. But because we came up with Vanderwall, then I thought, just to save 2 weeks of time, you might want some information to say, well, what could be done for this additional budget? So I was actually trying to give you more information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mayor?
so I second the motion made by
Well,
Kurt. So
I'm not sure I made a motion. I was looking for some advice as to how to make the motion. I get the sense that we'd want the whole Plan Commission to be able to ask questions, or do we want to just have Randy as our representative, have the work group do the public hearing, and then we submit questions to them? I mean, we don't want to open up questions to the public for a RFP, but perhaps council members also want to ask questions. So I'm just trying to think of the scope of who would host this meeting and what the standards would be for who asks.
okay,
I would think that we would take the top 3 recommendations from the work group, have the meeting in front of Plan Commission, and invite council members to participate.
I think that's a great point.
Would be my suggestion.
I agree with you. John Schaefer?
Yeah, I think I'm not against the recommendations from the commission, but this whole last half hour, we suddenly fixated on all these extra things that Vanderwall was going to do for us. And I think it's really muddied the water and confused the issue of how to make a good assessment, because we've thrown this all in as a special candy thing that's come on top of, we got sprinkles on top of our ice cream cone. And so I want to somehow be able to back off and say, let's remove ourselves from these extra things that Vanderwall throw in. And how can we go back and look at all 3 of these things, regardless of this stuff? We've really muddied the waters with this thing, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yep.
Sorry, I can't raise my hand because I'm the Zoom administrator, so I'm sorry if
Okay.
I keep interrupting people.
Yeah, go ahead.
But just to further explain what Mark was saying, because I want to make sure that it's very clear, the reason that the memo was dated a few days later is because this scope of service that Daphne is displaying on our screen, page 76 of your packet, just said that there are some additional tasks that we could do to utilize the remainder of the budget if it's of interest to the city. Mark and Daphne and I met to go over the proposals, and we independently ranked the proposals. We didn't all rank Vanderwall as our first choice, but we all had the two of the 3 of us had Vanderwall as our second choice, whereas Mark had Vanderwall as the first choice, and there was not a clear leader amongst the staff for the other firm. And so based on that, and having the zoning ordinance work group each independently rank Vanderwall as number 1, that was why we felt comfortable working with Vanderwall on the project. When we looked at the additional scope of services, we were of course interested in finding out what the exact cost estimates were on those, because we figured that that would be a question that would come up at the Plan Commission level. And we also know that we have a backlog of projects right now. So many of our ordinances that are housed within our department are outdated. And it's not just the sign code, our lighting code needs updates as well. Our official map needs updates. We have parking and landscaping specifications ordinance that need to be updated. And then we also have several plans, the sustainability plan, the arts plan, the bike ped plan, and many corridor plans. So speaking from a staff standpoint, we would love to get some extra assistance with projects if there is a remaining budgetary amount that could make that work. Whether it's with Vanderwall or not, to go out for the sign code, if we wanted to do a separate RFP with the remaining funds, we'd be, of course, open to talking about that. There is one thing that I do want to flag for the commission, because the question came up about whether there's any downside to interviewing the 3 finalists. And the only thing that I can think of that I just want to flag is that we have another request for proposals out right now for the University Avenue corridor plan. And I know that at least 2 of the 3 finalist firms are considering submitting an application. So there is going to be some additional work on the part of those 2 firms, because they would be using the same staff members. So if they are selected for one project, they aren't going to apply for the other. And so they're probably going to feel like they should submit a proposal to the city and not know about how the city's going to come down on the zoning ordinance. So it's some extra time, and I don't think that's a deal breaker, but I did just want to flag it.
That's really appreciated, Abby, to point that out. So, okay, so I think we don't see, other than that one point, that we don't see a downside to talking to these 3 people, all Plan Commission, and as Elder Ramsey said, invite the City Council. I think we are doing this after 40 years. We owe it to our taxpayers that we do the best we can. And that's how I look at it. So, okay, I make a motion to invite these top 3 firms to make a presentation, and the staff will work out the details. Need a second. Okay, second by John Schaefer. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So the motion passes. Are you opposed or you are in favor?
I'm opposed.
Oh, okay. So the motion passes 6-1. Okay, so we'll need a motion to adjourn.
Mayor?
Yep.
I just wanted to ask, is this Jen's last Plan Commission since it's the last one in April?
No, she will have one more.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yes.
We just don't want you to get away without saying
No,
goodbye and how much we appreciate her.
By the way, I'm trying to find a equally good replacement for Jen. Please, if you know anyone, and I have told Jen too, I would not want to see the Plan Commission all XY chromosomes. I would like, diversity, and I'm working hard and it is not going anywhere. Please, if you know somebody and who will bring diversity to our group here, that would be very much appreciated. And I'm having very difficult time. I'm spending a lot of time on this one and I'm not getting very far. Please, I need your help.
You won't be able to replace her. She'll just have to stay on.
I know.
I move that Jen stay on.
Yes.
Second.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Otherwise, need a motion to adjourn. I know Jen is amazing, so you all are, by the way, so.
Thanks, everyone. It's awfully nice. Motion to adjourn.
Okay, need a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And thank you to every one of you. You are making a difference and you are all amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thank you.
Night.
Good night.
Okay.